Welcome, everyone, to our next episode of Coffee with Sales Engineers. Today, we've got a sales engineering leader. So I'm so excited to have Karthik Pannamaneni join our podcast.
I like I was saying, think Italian. It's Pannamaneni, right? It's just
Pannamaneni.
that.
All right, I like that.
It's
Pannamaneni.
it's a great icebreaker in sales meetings.
Thank you for joining us for this podcast. Karthik, why don't you introduce yourself? And I've got some really interesting questions that I want to deep dive into about your career.
Great. Thank you for having me, Sachin. This is an amazing opportunity, and I really appreciate you doing this podcast. It's very helpful for a lot of the folks, not just SEs, SE leaders as well. My journey began 20 something years ago. Been an SE leader for about 20 something years now, about 10 years of SE leadership, and more recently have been working on a lot of startup companies. Great contributions from sales and sales engineering to customer success, customer support, marketing. I've been involving myself in a lot of things. So it's been a great journey, to say the least. It's given me being SE was one of the best decisions I made in my life, and it's brought along a lot of things to me.
Most people say, why didn't I find about this profession 5 years before I did? What triggered and brought you into the world of sales engineering?
Honest, I didn't really know anything about sales engineering. And the only concept I knew about, and it was through my family, my uncle, was field application engineering, which was very similar, but it was mostly in the hardware technical in the semiconductor world. But that I found out a little later. The way I fell into it, I went into implementation because that's where I got trained right after college. But one of the SEs came up to me and say, "Hey, you have a great personality, the technology really well, and you talk to customers really well. You might be a really good SE. You should think about it." I'm like, okay, this is great. I didn't know anything about the SE world, but it made sense. He introduced me to his manager at that point. Once we started talking, it became quite evident that I could be a really good fit and started learning more about what the SE is and does. And it was a great start from that point on. So that's how I got started in the SE world. It was just happenstance because somebody recognized my talent and said, "Hey, you could be a really good SE."
When this person is telling you about, hey, you've got the personality or technology, you would be great in front of prospects, come join the sales team. Was there an aspect of, I don't really want to be part of sales, or were you pretty okay with it? And did you think about it?
I did think about it a lot because sales always has a bad name, right? To say it too simplistically, I didn't want to be associated with it at that point. But just understanding some of the roles and what the SE did, and I tried to figure out, is that exciting for me? Is that exciting for me to be in this journey where talking to the customers about technology, which I already was doing to a large extent in the post-sales role? It was just in a pre-sales format. Now you have to sell instead of actually implement. That was a transition. I definitely thought about it.
I feel a lot of people are stuck on that, often don't even consider sales engineering because they've got this mythical, oh my God, I don't want to be associated with sales, and sometimes sales pressures. Like they've seen sales reps that come in and out, and the post-sales functions look more stable. How was your journey going from being a sales engineer to an SE leader? Now you're hiring SEs, you're growing an SE team. Anything about that experience?
The transition from an SE to an SE leader was not that easy. I could not find opportunities to break that glass ceiling to become an SE manager. It was tough in our industry. Here I am in my 20s asking to be a SE manager, right? Like they would always find the more experienced person to get that role. However, I did show the ability, hunger, and the passion towards the craft. Regardless of what it was, I always put 100% into my role as an SE. That's what caught my attention and caught my manager's attention. And I've been talking to him for quite some time about a leadership role. To be honest, he did not give it to me. And the best thing he told me was, "Karthik, I will find the right role for you." And he knew, and that showed me how good of a manager he was, how good of an assessment he made of me. And that's one of the traits that I picked up eventually as a manager as well. The role he put me on, it was a perfect role for me. It was a good blend of really going deep into the technology, really having the ability to have the conversation with product and engineering And then not losing the front end side, which is talking to the customers, being very intimate with the deals and driving deals. Kudos to my manager at that point. He took a chance on me as a first time leader, but also put me in the right SE manager role, because there were a couple of types of SE manager roles, and he put me in the right role. And from that point on, it was just the accelerator, right? I did what I did. I just picked up a lot of skills along the way. He was my mentor at that point too. He taught me to think about things differently. It wasn't just about being a technical counterpart. It's about the business. You want to look at the business, how effectively and how efficiently are running the business. It could be as simplistic as, hey, what's the value of your team? How is your team providing value to sales? How do you quantify that? How do you justify to sales team the contribution of your team? Right. Things like that he put in my head, and then that's what I developed over time. And it just becomes a more holistic thing over time. Every first-time SE manager thinks, I could do that job better, but it's experience that defines you. The experiences I've gotten over the last 10 years has defined me to who I am today, and the successes I've gotten over time as well.
That's amazing. Having great mentors is such a blessing, right? That shape the way our career journey takes. One thing you mentioned about becoming a leader, it's always difficult. And I know you mentioned that some sales engineers become a leader. There's this understanding that now you're just paper shuffling and behind the scenes. But do you feel you've been pretty hands-on SE leader as well?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of things I'll mention. I worked at a big company, ran a large team, but I was still very hands-on technically. I had to know the concepts. One of the roles that I had was providing input to the product and engineering teams. Mm-hmm. We had 3 or 4 business units that we had to work individually. I had to know different technologies and the feedback that was coming in, and how do we funnel that feedback as well. And It's not about feedback. This is the use case. It's about very specific feature level type of feedback. We had to be quite competent in that sense. The second part is coming to a startup company. When you have a team of 5 to 10 people, you have to be hands-on. You have to be involved in the deals, right? I can tell you, when you mentoring a new SE coming into the company and ramping them up, you are the deals. You are managing the deals with them. It's the crawl, walk, run approach. They're crawling and you're the one helping with the deals. The business does not stop. You have to help keep driving the business. When they're walking, you're just helping them. And then when they're running at that point, right? I truly believe in being as hands-on as possible. I don't want to tell people that I am the best SE on the team. I cannot be the best SE on the team. I have not done my job if I'm the best SE on the team. But yes, have to be involved, and also helps you understand 2 things. One, it helps empathize with what the SEs are going through, and you learn about how to improve their life experiences and by building tools or processes. Second, it is real life feedback from the customer. So you can go to marketing and work on messaging, go to product and say, hey, this is working, so let's enhance this. Getting directly involved is very important for me, and it's call it finger on the pulse. You want to have a finger on the pulse.
I like that. Just being part of the action. The whole fun of being part of sales is that quarter after quarter, year after year, month after month, being in a very tough competitive situation and win your way through. And that celebration along with your sales reps, the high fives, all of that is the fun part of sales. It's great that as a leader, you're part of it, you're there with your team. So that's pretty exciting. What's interesting about your career, Karthik, which I've also been hearing a lot about, this convergence of pre-sales and post-sales. You've obviously led both pre-sales and customer success functions. What is it like to be a leader where you've got people that are building the dream, and then you've got people that live in reality? Once that future vision is communicated and a buyer makes a decision on your platform, they start working with this team that actually has to be real and do the implementation. Give us some insights into what's been that experience managing both teams together.
Yeah, and it's fairly new. But before I answer that question, I should answer why I was given that opportunity. And this is for the other SE leaders as well to understand. My job, I've seen it as threefold as an SE leader. One is build the team and essentially recruit. Second is operational excellence for the SE team. It's things like having demo excellence, having POV trial excellence, reporting and metrics. And third is helping build out the go-to-market, working with marketing and the different teams to really help it out. And I've done it in a way it became like a machine, a well-oiled machine. I've done it a few times. You put me in a new company and I'll bring the playbook and I can do this in my sleep. The hunger was still there for me. I wanted to do new things. I wanted to learn new things. I wanted to grow my career myself as well. I've been talking to the CEO for quite some time. They saw the operational excellence I brought for the SE organization, and they gave me the opportunity to do the same for the customer support and success organization. When I took on the team, we had a great customer support team. They were exceptional, provided great service to the customer, but we really lacked customer success. That's the function that I really focused in on. Customer success, the term has been thrown around a lot, but in my mind, it's actually 3 specific metrics associated with it. One is, how do you help decline the churn, right? How do you help maintain the lowest churn possible? Second, how do you grow within your customer base? And third, how do you keep the highest experience possible within your customer base? The third one is more of experiential. You essentially wrap your arms around as many things as possible, customer related, whether it be deployments, whether it be post deployments, but more importantly, going directly to your question, it being the leader of both teams, the transition between pre-sales and post-sales became incredibly efficient.
Right.
I saw what the post-sales was struggling with. Pre-sales just throwing it over the fence. Here's a deal, go work on it. We provided some very prescriptive things for the pre-sales folks to do from a transition from pre-sales to post-sales. So the customer experience got a lot better immediately after that. The deployments got a lot faster right after that. The simple things that you can achieve when you have visibility into both worlds. The second thing is churn. How do you help with churn? You know what you sold to the customers, what was the primary use case, that you have that visibility, and then the transition you can actually make to the CS team. The CS team is fully knowledgeable and then knows what to expect and helps the customer through that journey as well. By keeping the pre-sales involved when we need to, but providing the additional value. Churn in my mind it's always about this. That's the one thing that always kept me up at night when doing the customer success role. But if you can do it right, you are able to manage that churn very well. Yeah. And it's also because you have visibility into pre-sales and post-sales as well. The last thing is around growing within the customer base. That was the most fun part for me. The other two are more defense related. Growing within the customer is very offensive. This is where your sales mindset comes from.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. What else can we do with the customer base that we have? They have these use cases, they have these other offerings. How do we actually go after it? I wanted to win it all. Putting my effort and taking my SE mentality and SE leadership mentality and applying it to how do we grow this customer base? That was very beneficial. So I'm surprised.
This is interesting because a lot of services organizations don't necessarily have SEs. But in upsell, you're essentially running an entire sales cycle. It's just a sales cycle with your customer, not a prospect. So there's that level of discovery, solutioning and validation, advocacy and promotion. Was it easier for your success people to have access to pre-sales because you were part of the same team, part of the same goal, part of the same vision? Versus I see that divide a lot where SCs are reserved for net new. And the moment escalations, yes, right? But the moment they're pulled in a direction where it's not tied to net new MRR or net new customer acquisition, there's a wall people end up saying, oh, I'm not responsible for that. Somebody else needs to do that, unless they have upsell attainment or something.
The simplistic thing, the way I think about this, like everybody's focused within a company around customer centricity. Everybody says that, everybody wants to do it. But the trick is, how do you actually go do that? In my opinion, having a common team that does both pre and post sales, reporting to one leader, having a common vision, not just customer centricity but how do you get the customer centricity is important. Like I talked about, the transition was important, like pulling pre-sales in when required, when in a post-sales process, like that's a very critical part of it too. Not just escalations during the upsell, renewal, cross-sell process. It's an intermix at that point. They're gold in two different ways, but It's one team working towards the common goal rather than the pre-sales team saying, I sold it, I'm done. But the pre-sales team still gets pulled in a lot. I chuckle a lot actually when I say customer centricity. I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, it's all about the actions. Building the organization in such a way is just one simple thing that you can do. Every company is very different. But what I did see is a relatively effective team, pre and post sales, working together and cohesion, working towards it. By the way, one thing that we did every Monday, myself and my leaders get on the call and talk about here's the trials that are coming. And this is how we want to focus on the trial. So the post-sales folks are completely listening in, glued in, and they're going to do everything possible to make the trial successful.
Yeah.
The post-sales team is talking about here are some of the renewals, upsells, cross-sells coming, and here's how we're actually doing these deployments. There was a really good blend. I think we were just making the machine work at that point. I was telling our CEO that he was a little ahead of his time when he gave me the role, because I didn't realize at that time what I was getting myself into. I knew I was running this, but now it makes complete sense reporting to the same leader. By the way, I've talked to a few other leaders that do the same thing as well. So it's becoming more of a norm, I think.
Another area that I want to quickly touch on, which I think is so important, is the relationship between the account executives and the SCs. When that relationship gels and there's synergy, they can complete each other's sentences. On a remote call or in person, there's this unspoken language. I'm sure you personally experienced that with some of your best reps. Things are just smoother. The prospects can feel like you're unified. But that only happens maybe 20, 30% of the time. What's been your experience in that AE-SC relationship? What have you done as leader to nurture that, or just any thoughts on the importance of that relationship?
Pairing an A and SE who have not known each other in the past, it's like arranged marriage, right?
Yeah.
So where the SE manager is like a matchmaker at that point. They have to really, I personally assessed a lot of the personality for the AE that I'm matching the SE with. The AE is definitely in the interview process as well. That chemistry is very important. If you have that chemistry, everything is just magic. It takes time to build that out. I'm going to only involve this person when I need to, is another resource. To another AE who saw me as a partner in crime. Everything we did together was an incredible experience for me personally as an SE. I felt like I was actively contributing to every part, and we were in a great place where we could divide and conquer. That's an important aspect as part of a sales team, is how much trust you can build with each other so you can go your individual ways and come back together. You can get a lot more work done if you're doing divide and conquer too. I think it comes from the AE leaders. If you have an AE leader who doesn't take the SC leader as a counterpart and thinks about that person as another resource, it trickles down to the team as well. In my journey, I've always tried to find leaders to work with that are like, they feel like I'm part of the engine, like they run every decision by me as well, right? And even if I say no and they still go forward with it, I feel heard. I am included. Like, exactly. I feel empowered about the fact that I am a valuable component of the machine. And it's the same thing with the AE and SE too. If the trickle happens and the SE essentially is empowered, great things can happen. I wish there was an AE school of how to deal with SEs as well, or an SE school of how to deal with AEs. There isn't one. It's just a matter of experience over time. And us as matchmakers trying to figure out what would be a great team.
I've sat through so many sales trainings, 3-day sales curriculum, and SCs would be invited to those. And I've personally sat through that going, half of this is not relevant to me. I'm glad to be sitting in it because I want to know exactly what my reps are learning. But I've always wished, why wasn't there a parallel sales training track for SCs? Because negotiation, objection handling, presentation skills, building trust, all of that is equally relevant to SEs, but in a different way. There's never a point where it said, okay, now you both have learned these best practices. Now go practice together. Nobody is teaching the AEs what their SCs are about, why they ended up becoming an SC, what inspires them to be an SC. If they're supporting you, it may not be all about money as it might be for you. And that's not a bad thing. So I think there's a gap there in terms of how SCs are learning about being an AE, right? I was fortunate enough to carry a number, and man, it was stressful. Gave me a lot more empathy for my reps who have to deal with the pressures of where's the deal? Why is it not closing? Have you done everything possible to bring it this quarter, bring it this month? So there's a lack of understanding on both sides. If we can just improve that, the relationship will improve.
Yeah, I think it's on the SEs as well. And us SE leaders is to help build that empathy within the SE
Yeah.
to deal with the amount of pressure that they get to go through, and the fact that majority of the AEs are 50-50 comped. Like 50,
Yeah.
it's not a small thing, right?
Yeah.
It is an incredibly pressure-filled
Half of
thing.
your salary is at stake every quarter.
So it's a learning process for both
Yeah.
sides. I hope the AEs are trained young in terms of how to use their resources, not just SEs, and all of the resources in general.
Yeah.
If they are trained well, they'll be a completely different animal by the time they get to a state. And I've seen really experienced reps be incredibly successful because they know how to manage the entirety of the team and not necessarily just the SEs as part of the team, like the entire team. And those are the ones that always have greatest success. And they always want to remain just the AEs because they know their superpower.
I'll leave you with a tagline. I believe that AEs can sell bigger, faster, and better deals by optimizing their SC resources. This has been so much fun, Karthik. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, your journey. Great having you on the podcast. Thank you for sharing your insights with the listeners.
I really do appreciate it, man. And this has been a great conversation for me. Thank you for inviting me. Hopefully there's more conversations like this in the future.
Anybody has questions for Karthik, look him up on LinkedIn, reach out. Thank you for joining.